Professor, thank you very much for joining us here at Asia House. I want to start with the escalating trade tensions between the US and China. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, actually, in my view or my understanding of the situation, really this is not a trade war. So trade war is only on the surface. The real conflict is ideology and the different systems. So the you see in the Congress and Senate of the United States, the two parties are not able to agree on anything, but only in one thing, which is China. So that means that this is much more than a trade war, much more than Donald Trump as a person, as a president. So if Donald Trump was not the president, someone else as the president, the overall trend is going to be the same. The difference is only how the trade war is managed. So it's possible that there will be no trade war, but still what happened is going to happen.
So there's still going to be escalating tensions, regardless of who's in the White House. And do you see this? This is clearly going to have an impact on the global economy, but that's specifically on the Chinese economy.
Right.
What's your read on how that will play out in terms of growth and reform, importantly?
Right. There are several different scenarios, and it's still not easy to assign probabilities of the different scenarios. So the best scenario is that under the pressure, China is going to commit to the reform program that China has designed long before. And also, China is going to commit to what they have promised, which the promises were made around 2003 when they joined the WTO. Yes. So if China is reforming and if China commit to their earlier promises, then the tension would not completely go away, but would be reduced substantially. So I hope that would happen. So that's the best scenario.
And the worst?
The worst scenario, if both sides fight to the extreme, then it's not impossible to have a new type of Cold War. New type of Cold War is going to be different from the last Cold War. The last Cold War, the core issue is more of nuclear weapons, but nowadays it's the weapon of high tech.
Yes. Well, this brings us neatly onto the research that you presented today, because one of the, for want of a better term, battlefronts of the escalating tensions is around technology.
Exactly.
AI, the huge disruptor in technology.
Right.
And the general view is the US is in front of China at the moment.
Right.
But there are some commentators who believe that China will overtake the US in the fairly near term. Right. What has your research shown?
Right. So actually, I showed only part of the stuff. If we look at a more complete picture, the so-called AI is never been a separate element. So it is only part of a whole environment or the ecosystem. The whole ecosystem needs lots more things than just data and algorithm. It's much more than that.
Such as connectivity, right? Sure.
Yeah, and also if even when we narrow down only pure technology, you need the computation power. And the computation power needs chips. And for chips, you need the capability of producing chips, of designing chips, So once we focus on the computation power, once we focus on the chips, then China actually relies heavily on the United States.
China also relies heavily on the US, according to your research, in terms of the platforms.
Right.
The open source platforms.
Right.
That China's developing on US platforms.
Exactly.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So the reason the Google platform and the Facebook platforms, the reason these platforms are so essential for the Chinese researchers is because of the two reasons, at least the two reasons. The number one reason is the algorithm. So the basic research, the basic breakthroughs in algorithm, these are not developed in China. So these are developed in the US. So based upon these algorithms, then they develop the coding. Then they open up, have this platform. So in terms of the research in algorithm, China is still substantially lagged behind.
So back to the escalating trade tensions, right. If things did get worse, and China was denied access to those open source platforms, that would have quite substantial impact.
Definitely, because the Chinese researchers include not only companies, but also academic researchers. So many of the papers published in the conferences, journals, many of those are based upon these platforms. So if they are cut off from these platforms, then even the research will be stopped, not only applications.
So despite the determination of the government and some of the great entrepreneurs and technology companies that exist in China, there's still quite a gap between China and the US on most of the metrics by which you measured.
Definitely, yes. So so when people claim that China is ahead of the US in AI, mostly what they mean is the visual recognition and the voice recognition and a few other things. But even in those areas, nowadays AI is actually at the infant stage, both in research and in applications. It's infant stage. So any claim of which country is the number one is too early, because it's infant stage. So what is going to determine the future is really the research. And there's no debate about the fact that in terms of basic research, China is substantially lagged behind the United States. Actually, not only lagged behind the United States, it's substantially lagged behind the UK and other Western European leading countries.
Professor Cheung, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be with you.